The house had been too quiet for too long. For months after Amelia's death, Ethan struggled to hear the silence. It wasn't the absence of noise that hurt him, but the absence of her laughter, her soft singing when she rocked their baby to sleep, her whispers when she'd say, "Ethan, we'll get through this." But now, there was only him, his 2-year-old son Noah, and a grief that sat so heavy on his chest it nearly suffocated him. Ethan was a wealthy man, a successful architect who had built towers in the city that touched the skyline, but none of it mattered now. None of the money, the status, the recognition could bring Amelia back. He had never imagined being a widowed father at 34, forced to juggle board meetings with midnight cries, or to balance grief with the pure responsibility of raising a boy who looked so much like his mother it tore his heart open each time Noah smiled. At first, Ethan tried to manage on his own. He refused help, insisted that he could handle both fatherhood and work. But Noah was restless, the nanny services rotated like a revolving door, and every night ended with both father and son crying themselves to sleep. Finally, Ethan hired help, not another professional nanny, but someone recommended by a family friend. Her name was Clara, a soft-spoken woman in her late 20s with a quiet strength in her eyes. She wasn't flashy, wasn't desperate to impress. She simply said, "I love children, Mr. Hayes. I'll do my best." From the beginning, Clara had a calming presence. Noah warmed up to her quickly, more quickly than he had with anyone since Amelia. At first, Ethan was both grateful and a little resentful. How could his son take to someone else so easily, when he himself was still struggling to connect? But he told himself it was a good thing. Noah needed nurturing, and Clara gave it without hesitation. One evening, Ethan returned home earlier than expected. His meeting had been cut short, and for once, he was glad. He wanted to see his son. The house smelled faintly of chamomile tea and baby powder. He walked quietly through the hallway, adjusting his tie as he approached Noah's nursery. That's when he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was the gentle, rhythmic suckling of a baby nursing. Ethan's heart stopped. Slowly, he pushed the nursery door open, and what he saw rooted him to the floor. Clara sat in the rocking chair by the window, her blouse slightly undone, Noah cradled against her chest. His small hands rested on her as he fed contentedly, eyes half closed in bliss. For a long moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. His mind spun, shock, confusion, anger, disbelief, all colliding into a storm. Clara's head turned, and when she saw him standing there, her face went pale. "Mr. Hayes," she began, her voice trembling. What are you doing?" Ethan's words came out like a growl, sharp and broken. Clara looked down at Noah, who was still nursing peacefully, oblivious to the tension. Tears gathered in her eyes. He wouldn't stop crying. He was hungry, and the formula wasn't working. He refused the bottle, again and again. I didn't know what else to do. Please, I didn't mean to overstep." Overstep, Ethan's voice thundered, though inside he felt something else, a dangerous cocktail of bewilderment and something he couldn't yet name. "That's my son. You can't just." But before he could finish, Noah let out a small whimper, as if sensing the shift in energy. Clara rocked him gently, humming, and he settled again. Ethan's rage faltered at the sight of his son so calm, so content in her arms. He hadn't seen him like this in weeks. "Mr. Hayes," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. "I know it's not my place. But when I saw him so desperate, so hungry, I couldn't let him suffer. I'm a mother too." Ethan blinked. "A mother?" She nodded, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. "I lost my baby last year. He was just 3 months old when he passed. My body never fully stopped producing. Sometimes I still." She stopped, her voice choked by grief. "When I heard Noah crying tonight, it broke me. I know you hired me to care for him, but I swear to you, I never planned this. I just couldn't watch him suffer when I knew I could comfort him." The room went silent except for Noah's soft breathing. Ethan's anger began to unravel, replaced by something heavier, empathy, sorrow, and a strange relief. He hadn't known this about Clara. He hadn't known her pain mirrored his own. Still, the sight of his son at her breast stirred a storm inside him. "You should have told me," he said, though his voice was softer now. Clara nodded. "You're right, I should have. I didn't want you to think I was trying to replace her. Your wife." The words hit Ethan like a knife. Amelia. He hadn't heard anyone say her name in weeks. His chest tightened. That night, after Noah fell asleep in Clara's arms, Ethan sat across from her at the dining table. The house was quiet again, but the silence was different. He looked at Clara, really looked at her for the first time, not just as an employee, but as a woman carrying her own invisible scars. "Why didn't you tell me about your son?" he asked gently. Clara stared down at her hands. "Because I didn't want your pity. I wanted this job. I needed it. And, being around Noah, it feels like healing. Like maybe I still have a purpose." Ethan swallowed hard. For the first time since Amelia's death, he felt a strange sense of connection with someone else's grief. He had spent months drowning in his pain, forgetting that others carried their own. Days turned into weeks, and something unspoken began to shift in the house. Ethan no longer saw Clara only as an employee. He saw the way she soothed Noah, the way she hummed lullabies he hadn't heard since Amelia, the way her own laughter filled rooms that had been silent for too long. He noticed how she avoided talking about herself, how her eyes sometimes carried a distant sorrow when she thought no one was watching. One evening, after a long day at work, Ethan returned to find Clara and Noah in the living room. She was reading to him, her voice animated, while Noah giggled and clapped his hands. The sight pulled something deep inside Ethan, something warm that had been buried under grief. When Clara noticed him, she smiled softly. "He's starting to talk more today," he said. "Mama." The word pierced Ethan's heart, but instead of breaking him, it made him realize something. Noah wasn't just healing. He was living again, and a large part of that was because of Clara. Over the following months, Ethan and Clara's bond deepened, not rushed, not forced, but growing quietly like roots beneath the soil. He found himself drawn to her resilience, her tenderness, her quiet strength. And she, though hesitant, began to open her heart again, little by little. But with every step forward, Ethan wrestled with guilt. Was he betraying Amelia's memory? Was he selfish for even thinking of another woman in this way? One night, after tucking Noah into bed, Ethan found Clara in the kitchen washing bottles. He stood in the doorway, watching her for a moment before speaking. "Clara," he said quietly. She turned, surprised. "Yes." He stepped closer, his voice trembling. "I don't know how to feel about this. About us. About everything. But I do know one thing, I haven't seen my son this happy since Amelia passed. And I haven't felt alive until you." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan," he reached for her hand, his chest heavy with fear and hope. "I don't know where this will go. But I don't want to face tomorrow without you here." For the first time in years, Clara let herself cry freely, not from sorrow, but from the fragile hope of a new beginning. And so, in a house that once echoed with silence, laughter returned. Not the same as before, not to replace what was lost, but to weave something new. A widowed father, a grieving mother, and a little boy who bound them together in ways they never imagined. Ethan often thought back to that night, the night he walked in on Clara nursing his son. What had shocked him then no longer felt like a violation, but a miracle. Because in that moment, life had reminded him that love could be born again, even from the deepest wounds. And for the first time since Amelia's death, Ethan whispered into the quiet night, "Thank you."